It's Exhibit N. Just make sure that that's indeed your statement, and that's the statement that you made to Captain van Aert, and it's your signature.
Yes, my lady, I
And my
confirm.
understanding is that Mr. van Aert was very professional. You told him your version, he took it down, as policemen must do, he read it back to you. You were satisfied, then you signed it and you took the oath. You affirmed the correctness of the statement.
That is correct, my lady.
And you were satisfied that your statement reflected the true position of the event.
According to my observations that evening,
No.
I believe this is accurate.
And as your statement was made at a time that was relatively close to the events would have been sort of fresh in your memory. It was not a long time. It was a month after the incident.
That is correct, my lady.
Yes. I want to ask you certain things about it, Mr. Johnson, if you would bear with me. I'm going to deal with a number of aspects that I will argue to the court that it's striking that you were yesterday in a position in your evidence of chief to testify about. I'm going to start with the first one, and let me immediately preface it by saying to you, the first point that I'm going to raise would seem to be really insignificant, and that is when you went to bed. And I know it doesn't matter really on the merits of the case whether you went to bed at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 or 12 o'clock or 8 o'clock, but it will be used in conjunction with other points. So I'm sorry about the first point. But what was interesting about your evidence yesterday is this, that you say in your evidence that you went to bed between 9 and 10. You remember that?
I do, that is correct.
Now, of course, how insignificant might be. What was interesting that in your statement, as you will see, you say that you went to bed approximately 9 o'clock. However, in your wife's evidence, she used exactly the same time, not approximately 9 o'clock, but that you went to bed between 9 and 10, the same as your evidence yesterday.
Must I respond, my lady?
Yes?
I don't find it's funny. It's our routine. We are highly routinely based people, and if you have to ask me what time I went to bed 2 weeks ago, I would confidently answer between 9 and 10. That's our, we go to bed, we finish up and retire between those hours.
Mr. Johnson, the point is maybe different. Whilst you would so confidently answer between 9 and 10, that was not your statement. But we'll get to the other points. This is a small one. Your statement was approximately 9 o'clock and not between 9 and 10. It is just a coincidence, perhaps, that your wife testified that it was between 9 and 10, and yesterday when you testified, yours were also then, contrary to your statement, between 9 and 10. That's all. But it's not because you've discussed it with your wife.
Not at all.
Good. Now, the second point is this. You can go through your statement, and I will not mislead the court, but in paragraph 5 of your statement, 4 and 5, you deal with making a call to the security and the wrong security and whatever. Not too important. But what you don't deal with was what was the situation at that time with the woman screaming. You agree?
My lady, that is correct.
You don't deal with it in your statement. Now, will you accept it when I put it to you that likewise, and the statement is before court as Exhibit M, likewise, your wife deals with the telephone call to security, and also in a statement does not deal whether there was screaming at that time. Will you accept?
I accept that, yes.
Yeah. Or whether she heard screaming or whether there was screaming, whatever. Same as yours. Both of you in your statements did not deal with it. However, in cross-examination, I asked her about it, and she said words to the effect that at that time she was not focusing on concentrating on the screaming because of the telephone. You understand?
I do.
Of significance yesterday, without the state prompting you, no question from the state in that regard, you tendered evidence consistent with that of your wife that she had not dealt with in her affidavit to say, the state didn't ask you about it. I didn't pay any attention to any sounds coming from the house or the direction. How is that? How is that your wife was cross-examined? It's not in your statement. It is not in her statement. She was then cross-examined about the screaming at the time of the telephone call, and she said that she was focusing on something else, meaning she didn't pay attention. You then, out of your own accord, without the state asking you, go there and say, without anyone asking you, I didn't pay attention to that. How's that?
It's quite simple. It's notes that I made to myself after the advice of Advocate Nikki Marit, and I've obviously reviewed those notes to remind myself that's a note that I made, that I did not pay attention or wasn't aware of any sounds that came from the direction where the incident happened, because I was focusing on the telephone call.
Can we see the notes?
I don't have a printed copy available.
Can you tell someone where it is and go and fetch it whilst you're in court, that we can look at the notes?
I have no problem with that. I have a copy on my iPad, which is in the witness room back.
Well, so we can print it, and those notes were made before your statement.
That is correct, yes.
And you agree that you give that note to Captain van Aert?
I did not. I informed him about it, my lady, and he said I must keep it in a safe place.
And your first statement that you made to the two policemen that came, where is that? Did you keep a copy of that?
I did not receive a copy of that, my lady. It was I would term it as just a casual conversation relating.
Did you not make a written statement?
Not that first evening, my lady.
Not the first evening, sorry, you just referred to that statement in your evidence.
Yeah, so there were two visits. The one evening was by the two investigating officers, my lady. And then in the following week, Captain Mike van Aert contacted me, made an appointment, and that's when I made my first official statement.
Your iPad will, of course, show when you put the notes on your iPad. Did you put it on at that time, or was it more recent?
My lady, I have a copy. The notes were made on my personal laptop computer, and I've kept it there, a copy. Last night, I converted the notes to a PDF format and transferred it to my iPad.
So we will be able to see when the first note.
My lady, I think it would be possible to derive that from the file history. But
we will get it during the adjournment. We'll get the notes, and you're satisfied to show it to us.
Absolutely.
And what caused you to make that note?
It was, my lady, it was on the advice of Advocate Nikki Marit. He said that normally these cases take a very long time before they are heard before a court, and your memory will fade, so he advised us to make notes in as much detail as we can remember, to rely on to refresh your memory later on.
But it's a bit different, because this is not a note of what you observed. It's a note of what you did not observe. It's a negative. That's why I'm asking.
My lady, the content of the note describes the entire experience. What I make explicit mention of the fact that I did not pay attention to the sounds from the direction of where the lady's screams were coming. It's one sentence and probably a 1.5-page document.
We'll look at the notes. That's not important. Well. Now let's go to the next point. In your statement, and I want you to read it out, paragraph 6, just before the shots. I can help you. It says, ek het die vrou gehoor gil. You see that?
I do.
In your wife's statement, she says the same thing in paragraph 6. Ek het die vrou gehoor gil, meaning I heard the woman screaming or yelling.
I accept that.
Yes. However, in your evidence, you then described the screaming. You defined that. You said that it was more intense. You could hear the fear. You remember that? Would that be correct?
Are you referring to my testimony yesterday?
Yes.
Yes, my lady, I remember that.
Is that in your note?
I can't recall.
Yes. Now, what is significant in your wife's evidence, not in a statement, she also defines or describes just the one word, gil, or the yell or the scream, to say that it was more intense and she could hear the fear. Exactly the same. And it is remarkable that it is not in her statement, not in your statement. She testified about it to describe, and you come and you testify about it in the same manner. Can you explain that? I would venture a guess that the way you verbally tell the story, yes, there's a lot more emotion involved when you convey the experience, yes, where the statement is more factual recollection. Well, let's go on. Let's go to scream. If you look at paragraph 6, I read to you, first the Afrikaans, ek het die vrou gehoor gil en toe 'n sarsie skote gehoor. To translate, I heard a woman screaming and then I heard a volley of shots. Are you satisfied with my translation?
I'm satisfied.
Is that what you meant to tell the person that took the statement from you?
That is correct, yes.
Yes. In your wife's statement, starts the same. She heard the woman screaming and then 4 shots. You just had a volley of shots. You had 4. I heard the woman screaming, and then the shot. So that's in her statement. That's in your statement. However, in her evidence, she said, and she used now explicit word, that she heard the screaming also during the shots. You have that?
Yes, I do.
You come to court yesterday and you testified now with explicit language that you don't have to infer from it that you heard the shots, the screams, also screams during the shots. Do you agree?
I agree. That is
Yes.
exactly what I heard.
Let's go to the first one. Next one. Let's go to your statement, paragraph 6. You say, and I first read the Afrikaans that you can find it. Die laaste gil was net na die laaste skoot. 1 tot 2 secondes, meaning the last scream was just after the last shot, plus minus 1 to 2 seconds. You have that?
I do.
Your wife's evidence, not evidence, statement, the woman gave the last scream about 2 seconds after the shot. You see that? But when your wife gave evidence, she said the following. She said that the last scream, she said, I heard her voice fading away with the last scream. Significantly, when you gave evidence yesterday, as it was not stated in your statement and your wife's statement, but in her evidence, you said the following. The last scream, it faded moments after the shot. The fading. She spoke about the fading of the scream after the last shot, and you speak about the fading. How is that?
When we had to testify, my lady, or not testify, make the statement, I used the indication of seconds to indicate a very short duration. I chose different words. If I have to describe it verbally, that's how I would explain it. I think the 1 or 2 seconds perhaps came in response to a question from Captain van Aert. How long? I'm fairly certain that I would have given him a similar version, verbal explanation of moments after the last shot, the last scream faded away.
Mr. John?
And then I think he asked me how long were the moments, and to try and peg a time frame on it, I probably said 1 or 2 seconds, or it could be half a second.
Mr. Johnson, it's not about the time. It's about the exact same word. Not in your statements, only in her evidence. Fading. And then in your evidence, fading.